Okay, imagine this. A king with just days to live has one final, all-important quest.
He's running out of time, and he's desperate to understand the ultimate truth of the universe. So to really focus his mind for this mission, he literally gave up everything. I mean, he walked away from all his power and even his closest personal relationships. With his mind totally clear, he goes to a great sage to ask, well, life's biggest questions.
So, first up, how did this whole universe even get started?
And then, what's the force that holds it all together and keeps everything moving?
And his final question, how does it all end? You know, the ultimate fate of everything.
But, get this, the sage's answer isn't what you'd expect at all.
He starts with these invocations, prayers meant to prepare the mind for some really deep knowledge. So his answer doesn't start with facts, but with respect for the actual source of everything. And right there, you see this key shift, from asking how it works to asking who is behind it. The sage talks about this being whose name alone is powerful enough to purify the world. And this is where it gets really interesting. The text says this knowledge is for absolutely everyone. Yeah, it says anyone, no matter who they are or what they've done, can find this purification. And through these prayers, we start to get a picture of what this divine creator is actually like.
So this whole intro, it's not a detour. It's actually a necessary preparation for what's next.
The sage then lays out where this knowledge comes from, passed down through an unbroken chain of teachers.
Which leaves us with a really big question. To understand the how, do we first have to explore the who?
The deep dive is your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. We take deep source material and really pull out the essential knowledge and insights for you.
Exactly.
Today, we are immersing ourselves in excerpts from Canto 2, Chapter 4. This is a really pivotal segment in a foundational philosophical text.
It is. This chapter marks a massive shift.
A huge shift. It's the moment a king who has just received this ultimate wisdom completely changes his life.
Yeah.
And then
he asks three of the most challenging questions about the cosmos you could ever formulate.
That's it. Our source material here covers these 25 verses, and it's all about a dialogue between King Parīkṣit and the sage Śukadeva.
Right. And the king has gone from a state of, let's say, curiosity to this radical commitment. And now he needs to know how it all works, the deep cosmological mechanics.
So we're going to follow the three distinct movements of this chapter. First, the king's profound realization.
Then the complexity of his questions, his inquiry.
And finally, the sage's comprehensive, sort of multifaceted answer, this invocation that establishes the universal nature of the Supreme Being.
We're not just looking at a philosophical lecture here.
No, not at all. We are tracking an immediate, real-world consequence of spiritual truth. The king hears this wisdom, and his response isn't just polite interest.
No, it's total commitment.
Followed by the ultimate set of intellectual demands. Okay, let's unpack this.
So the chapter opens right after the previous discourse.
And the text immediately emphasizes the speed and the definitiveness of the king's reaction. It says, upon receiving what it calls truth determination, he instantly fixed his intelligence entirely on the supreme. This wasn't something he decided to, get around to next week.
It was immediate. And that immediate intellectual commitment led to a radical physical act of renunciation. This is really the first big lesson of the chapter.
And when we say renunciation,
well, we often think of minor adjustments, right? But the text makes it clear this was a total overhaul. The king gave up what is described as his deeply rooted attachment.
to everything.
To his wife, his sons, his entire household, his wealth, relatives, everything, including his vast, complete kingdom.
Okay, I have to pause there. He's a king. He's running a whole nation.
He is.
The source says he had given up the three big goals of life: righteous conduct, economic development, and sense enjoyment, to focus solely on this ultimate path. I mean, that sounds kind of reckless, doesn't it?
It does.
If true knowledge demands you abandon your entire earthly responsibility, including your family, how is that sustainable for a society?
That is a critical question, and the source addresses it by showing the king's unique situation. See, he was facing a swift, imminent end to his life.
Okay, context is key.
Absolutely. So his decision, framed within that context, is the ultimate commitment. He recognizes that when time is short, the highest value, which is ultimate knowledge, it supersedes all the lower values, even righteous governance.
So for him, intellectual and spiritual focus became the only necessary duty.
Precisely.
And that focus then drives his inquiry. Once his personal commitments are settled, his intellectual curiosity it explodes. He praises the sage for dispelling his inner darkness, but now he wants the blueprint.
Yes. And what follows are 3 incredibly dense, specific questions that the text itself notes are difficult even for great cosmic controllers to grasp.
So he wasn't asking the basics.
Oh no, he was demanding to know the inner workings of reality itself.
The first question broadly is the origin story, right? How does the Supreme Being create this entire universe using only his own internal energy? He's asking for the mechanism.
And he immediately follows up on the maintenance side. How does the Lord sustain the universe, protect it, and then later withdraw it? And crucially, what specific energies does the Supreme Person use to perform what's described as his pastime?
His divine play.
Right. It implies that creation and destruction aren't some cosmic struggle. They're inherent acts of enjoyment.
And the third question is the great paradox, the one about unity versus diversity.
The big one.
How can this single unified entity assume so many different forms and functions? How does he simultaneously, or maybe sequentially, adopt all the material modes across countless actions and births? I mean, it's asking for the secret of how one becomes many.
It is. And the king wraps it all up by appealing to the sage's authority. He recognizes him as an expert in both word Brahman, the knowledge in the scriptures, and the supreme Brahman, the ultimate reality itself. He's asking for a resolution to this doubt.
He wants the integration of the text and reality.
That's it, exactly.
So the sage receives these heavy, almost unanswerable questions. Does he just launch right into a detailed cosmological lecture?
No, he doesn't. The narrative tells us he pauses to remember the Lord. He centers himself before he even speaks.
Which is an essential step, isn't it? The idea that realization has to come before articulation.
It's critical. And that pause leads to this beautiful invocation, which starts to define the indefinable. He begins not by explaining how the universe is created, but by stating who the creator is. He salutes the Supreme Person as the single cause of the 3 cosmic functions.
Origin, sustenance, and cessation.
A whole cycle.
But what's fascinating to me is the tension it sets up right away. This entity accepts all 3 material potencies to do these things, but the text simultaneously says his path is imperceptible.
Right.
So he's the actor, but he's beyond our apprehension. If he's imperceptible, how can the king possibly hope to understand the detailed mechanics he just asked for?
That is the core tension.
Yeah.
And the next 2 verses start to resolve it through contrast. The sage describes this entity as the embodiment of pure existence. And he says he's approachable by those established in the highest spiritual order.
In other words, the pure can approach pure reality.
You've got it. And then you get the flip side. While he is the chief of all devotees, the text says he is utterly far removed from those who practice impure methods.
So he enjoys his glory in his own abode.
Exactly. He is simultaneously the most accessible truth for the dedicated and completely inaccessible to those whose focus and methods are, well, flawed.
So the answer is becoming less about external mechanics.
And more about internal qualification, yes. Having established the Supreme Person's transcendental nature, the sage then moves immediately to the practical implications.
This is the good stuff.
The path of devotion versus the path of strenuous effort. This is where we get the most accessible, high-impact principle of the whole chapter.
Yeah, this is critical for anyone, really, trying to gain knowledge or achieve any goal. The source describes the instantaneous effect of simple devotional acts.
Simple ones.
Think about it: chanting, remembering, seeing, bowing, or even just hearing about the Supreme Being. The text says these actions instantly dispel the world's impurities.
Instantly. It implies a direct, immediate cleansing effect. It challenges the whole notion that spiritual progress has to be this slow, grueling process.
And we see the contrast drawn out in the next few verses. The wise attain liberation, but only by first approaching the Supreme.
And giving up all inner attachment. That's the key.
Right. And even ascetics, generous donors, famous people, great scholars, none of them can find genuine well-being without offering themselves to this ultimate path.
The takeaway isn't that those activities are bad. It's that they are incomplete. Dedication becomes the non-negotiable step that empowers every other action.
Okay, now, verse 18. This is what makes this chapter so radically inclusive and frankly relevant today. It talks about the social implications of this grace.
It's a huge social leveler.
It lists groups that were traditionally considered outsiders or marginalized, all these different tribes. and it says other sinners.
And the text confirms these groups are purified, but the mechanism is so interesting. They're purified not just by approaching the Supreme Being directly.
Right, but by taking shelter of those who have already taken his shelter.
Exactly. It highlights that this purifying power is universal and it's accessible through community, through association. It's saying that no matter your origin, no matter your past, the path is open through the medium of the dedicated.
Wow. So the invocation continues by detailing the sheer comprehensive authority of the Supreme Being.
Yep.
It lists all of his roles.
All of them. He is the soul of souls, the master, embodying knowledge, righteousness, austerity.
The titles just keep coming. They confirm that every type of power or refuge we can even imagine resides in him. He's the Lord of Fortune.
The master of all creation, Lord of the worlds, and this is significant, the Lord of the intellect.
Lord of the intellect. That brings us right back to the king's quest for knowledge.
It does.
The text states the wise perceive the ultimate truth of the self through an intellect that has been purified by focused meditation on his feet. So it creates this loop.
A feedback loop. The intellectual pursuit only bears fruit when the intellect itself is clean and dedicated.
If we connect this to the king's question, it suggests that the method of knowing is just as important as the facts you're trying to know.
Precisely. The Lord is even established as the root of original wisdom. The sage recalls that the Lord was the one who previously inspired fundamental knowledge into the heart of Brahma, the creator.
Making him truly the chief of all sages.
The source of the source.
And then finally, we get to the conceptual answer for the king's most complex question: how the one becomes the many.
Yes. Verse 23 details the mechanism of existence. The Supreme Lord first creates all the bodies, all the vessels, using the great elements of nature.
And then, after creating the structure,
the single entity enters into that structure as the Puru, the soul, to enjoy and experience all the components of the subtle body and the senses.
it's a beautiful resolution to the paradox.
It is. The single entity creates the stage and then enters it to enact the manifold experience. He is simultaneously the architect and every single member of the audience.
The chapter then concludes with final salutations to the source of this knowledge and a strong validation of his authority. The text talks about the gentle ones drinking the nectar of knowledge from the Lord.
And verse 25 confirms the transmission chain, which validates the information for you, the listener. This exact knowledge was first spoken by the Supreme Being to Brahma, and Brahma then delivered it to Narada.
It secures the lineage of this wisdom.
And brings the king's initial inquiry to a definitive close.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've moved from King Parīkṣit's ultimate act of renunciation, giving up his kingdom, his deepest attachment,
The rabbinical act.
to his profound, detailed cosmological inquiry, and then receiving this extensive answer that frames the entire universe around the universal, purifying power of commitment and the critical role of a purified intellect.
Yeah. If you take away only two things from this, let them be these. First, the powerful commitment that's required for true knowledge, shown by the king's radical act.
And second,
The radical inclusivity found in the path of shelter. It confirms that spiritual purification is instantly accessible to anyone, regardless of their background, simply through positive association.
so what does this all mean?
Well, the source material repeatedly defines the Supreme as the Lord of the intellect. So if the pursuit of knowledge is only perfected when our intellect is purified by dedication, does true being well-informed require not just gathering external data, but a genuine internal focus or commitment? How does understanding that the ultimate source of knowledge may also be the highest spiritual goal? How does that fundamentally change the way we approach learning and critical thinking in our own lives? That's the question this deep dive leaves you with.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to crack open an ancient text to explore one of history's biggest questions. This is a story about what happens when you ask, hey, how does the universe work? And the answer you get completely changes how you see everything.
And this is the big one, right? This is the huge question at the heart of our story. But get this, it wasn't asked by a scientist in a lab coat, it was asked by a powerful king who had just days left to live and was on an all-out quest for the ultimate truth.
Now, to really understand the answer he gets, we first have to understand the guy asking the question, King Parīkṣit. This was a powerful ruler who, in his final moments, gave up absolutely everything for just a single piece of knowledge.
Just imagine that for a second. You have only a few days left. What do you do? Well, King Parīkṣit's response was pretty radical. This wasn't some casual philosophical thought experiment for him. No, this was a life-or-death, all-consuming pursuit of understanding, and it was fueled by a complete and total detachment from the world he knew. I mean, he systematically let go of every single attachment. His family, his unbelievable wealth, his entire kingdom, he just set it all aside. This whole act of renunciation was his way of proving, look, I'm not looking for a simple answer. I'm ready for the real truth, no matter what. So, with his mind totally cleared of all those worldly distractions, sitting by the banks of a sacred river, the king finally turns to the sage Śukadeva and asks the ultimate question about the very nature of reality. You gotta pay attention to the language he's using here. He isn't asking for a dry, scientific formula, is he? He uses words like playing and toys and inconceivable energies. So the king wasn't just asking for a simple timeline of creation. He was asking about the power, the personality, and the purpose behind the whole show. And he's not naive about it, right? He totally gets the sheer scale of what he's asking. He's not expecting some easy, pat answer. He knows he's asking for a peek into a mystery that goes way beyond normal human thinking, a truth that even the most brilliant minds have struggled with.
Okay, so let's dive into this, because the sage's response is completely unexpected. It basically turns the whole question on its head and shows us there's a totally different way of knowing things.
So the king asks, how? And we're all expecting a technical manual, right? A cosmic blueprint. But that is not what he gets. Instead of explaining the mechanics, the sage starts to describe the creator. The answer isn't a lecture at all. It's this beautiful, poetic series of salutation. So, what does this portrait of the creator actually look like? Well, the sage's prayers, they don't describe some impersonal force or a big machine. They paint a picture of a divine being who's defined by qualities like mercy, incredible power, and just ultimate purity. The very first verse of the reply just sets the whole tone. It establishes the subject not as some distant, cold force, but as a supreme person, someone who is actively and even playfully engaged in this cosmic dance, but in a way that's totally beyond our full understanding. Now, throughout the reply, the sage keeps repeating this one specific name, Subhadra Shravase. It means one whose glories are auspicious to simply hear. And that implies something pretty amazing, that the very act of hearing about this being is what's transformative. The medium is the message, you know?
And then the sage makes this really bold claim. He says that all the things we think of as worldly success, being smart, famous, rich, skilled, they're all ultimately empty. He argues they only find real meaning and lead to genuine happiness when they're connected to a higher divine purpose.
And this is where the path just becomes radically open to everyone. The sage lists all these groups from the very edges of society. We're talking hunters, foreigners, people considered outcasts. The text says that all of them, with zero exceptions, can be purified by connecting with this supreme being. It's a really profound statement about spiritual inclusivity. It's no coincidence that this term, which means to the all-powerful one, is used right after that super-inclusive list. It's there to emphasize that the power to purify is absolute, it's universal, and it's not limited by your social status, your background, or anything you've done in the past. It is available to all.
So the crucial point here is this. The sage is offering the king a completely new way of knowing. He's shifting the focus away from just thinking about it, from intellectual analysis to a devotional connection. The path to understanding isn't a thought experiment, it's a practice.
So what does that practice actually look like? Well, the text lays out these really simple, accessible methods, things like hearing and chanting and just remembering. It says that just by engaging in these simple acts of devotion, a person can immediately start to cleanse their life and get closer to the truth. And right here, this is the real answer to the king's cosmic question. The sage is teaching him that you don't understand the universe by taking it apart like a clock, you understand it by connecting with its source. So the answer requires this fundamental change in consciousness, from asking, how does it all work, to how can I appreciate and connect with the one who makes it all work? So this ancient text kind of leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. In our own quest for knowledge, we so often prioritize analyzing everything, taking it all apart. But maybe, just maybe, the key to understanding the deepest mysteries of the universe isn't found in a formula, but in a feeling of profound awe, reverence, and just appreciation.